Welcome to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast, where Gauri Ramkumar of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Good day, everyone. Our guest today is Arshabhi Rai, technical writer at Solace. Welcome, Arshabhi, to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you, Gauri, and thank you for having me.
Fantastic. So, Arsh, am I okay to address you as Arsh?
Yes, Arsh is perfect. That's
fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Arsh, please introduce a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into documentation initially, and who made you to make this as your career choice?
Sure. So, before I started my career as a technical writer, I worked as a marketer and a sustainability consultant for a while. So that kind of involved a lot of content development for sure, but especially in the sustainability consulting area, I had to create a lot of training documents, a lot of reports. In a way, I was already doing a bit of technical writing and training. And a couple of years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I did a contract job where I had to actually work, use a software, data management software to collect data for energy, resources, waste, and all that. So I learned it, and I had to also create a training manual for the rest of the staff. So that was sort of a Kickstarter where I really enjoyed doing that, understanding the technology, working with the technology, and also training people. So that was really a Kickstarter. And then at that point, I guess I sort of decided that this was the career that I want to get into. So then I did a bit of a study for a year in Toronto, studied technical writing, and then that's where my technical writing career started.
Super. So I think I was just telling the training is special. It gives you a special feeling, right? Because somebody is learning something new from the training. And I've used to do teaching in my previous career, so I always enjoy teaching. Super.
Yeah, that sort of a 1-year study was actually quite important, because while I did a bit of technical writing, I think I didn't really understand the inner works of how things go, what is the process, what sort of frameworks you use, kind of thing. So 1-year study actually really helped me a lot to kickstart my career. Plus my previous experience also kind of added a bit of a help as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what's your documentation process at Solace, and which teams do you normally get involved in defining such processes?
Sure. So Solace offers a very solid end-to-end sort of event designing and event streaming and management platform, which entails a lot of different products, where you have a tool which we developed recently that helps you design event architecture, and also different SaaS and hardware and software products, right? So there's a variety of products and a variety of team. So, and all those products has documentation requirements. So our documentation team gets involved right from the get-go during the whole software development cycle. We work with PLM architects, developers, QA, and also product managers. So I think the architects really have an overall view of the whole sort of a software. So they are really helpful in terms of identifying the impact areas of the documentation, what we need to write. And then we have your PLM and product managers who really work with the customers. So they know the pain points. So it's really helpful to have them on board. So after that, I guess we write our documentation, and then we have a QA team, which we work very closely to, I guess, sort of make sure that the documentation is up to knowledge, is technically correct, and then that's where we sign off. So that's really the feature side of things, where once the feature comes into play, but also we have other channels and other requirements that comes through from CTO office, from Slack, from support and customer success team, marketing team as well. And also we get a lot of feedback from our documentation side as well. So it's really a big ecosystem where documentation has a very important role to play. And in terms of how we work in our process, I guess we have a 2-week sprint cycle where we identify what our feature documentation is, what sort of important bugs are, what are the web design tasks we have, search aspect as well, architecture too. So we basically prioritize a task based on that, and we tackle our sort of documentation every 2 weeks.
Yeah, super. So sounds like a big piece of activity going on when it comes to documentation. So since you've got so many teams involved, so many requirements coming from different angles. So what are the important factors you consider when creating documentation?
in terms of task-based, I guess it really you prioritize task-based on, I guess obviously the new features are always important and the bugs are always important. So it really we prioritize task-based on that. But in terms of overall strategy, I guess at the end of the day, I think it's a more of a cliche thing, but I guess we really try to focus on who our users are and who our audience is. So basically, how much knowledge do they have about a specific product or a feature? Are they a novice or someone who's more experienced, right? What sort of terminologies they already know, and what sort of concepts would they need to know before they actually jump into completing a task? All those things are really considered. We discuss it. And especially this is at this point, I guess the PLM team and the support and SEs are really helpful. So talking with them to understand who users are, how are they going to use their product, I guess is really important. So understanding your users. And then we also try to, I guess, I personally try to figure out what sort of problem we are trying to solve. What will a user do? How will they use this? How will they use this specific documentation? Do we need a code sample? Are they going to just use it for a test? Are they going to jump into production? Based on that, I guess we have to figure out how I write and what sort of documentation I write. Once that's figured out, once you know who our user is, once you figured out their sort of the problem that they're trying to solve, then we decide, I guess, what sort of documentation we need, whether we need a conceptual guide, installation walkthroughs, do we need code samples, do we need a quick starter, do we need something in the GitHub, do we need images, videos, where in the documentation is this going to be placed, all those aspects. And I guess also equally important, along with the content, I guess, is you also need to, figure out the whole architecture of your documentation. Is where will it fit in? How will the user access it? What sort of search titles do we need? And also the sort of devices and stuff they'll use.
Mm-hmm. Super. So have you noticed any kind of reduction in your workload since introducing such quality documentation?
Reduction in the workload. Well, that's a sort of a tricky one. I guess I won't say reduction in the workload, but I guess it's sort of a good documentation I think I personally feel that a good documentation reduces support cost a lot. So if a support team can guide a user to our documentation rather than them having to solve their problem over a phone or a chat, I think that itself reduces a lot of valuable time and resources, right? And then we also work very closely with customer success team. So if you have a really solid documentation, for example, say a really good deployment guide that's been written in documentation, and they can easily point their users or our customers to the documentation rather than having them walk through the whole process, that itself is reducing their time, which is obviously is a valuable resource which can be focused elsewhere, I guess.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as you rightly said, customer support could be a very costly element in the whole keeping your customers happy process. So having a good documentation always gives good credibility, not only to the product, to the whole company, I guess.
And also as well, like working very closely with the support team and our customer success team is also very important. And we are lucky that we have access to our team members, support and customers, because they talk with the customers, they solve their pain, they know their pain points, they work with them all the time. So having them on board to review your documentation and asking them the feedback is also very important. So that really helps improve your documentation too.
Absolutely. So do you consider searchability when producing technical documentation?
Say that again. Sorry. Could you?
Do you consider searchability when producing technical documentation?
I think search, I've always been wondering about search for a while now, because I recently, a couple of months ago, maybe last year, I wrote a sort of article about how you integrate Algolia's search engine into the tool that we use, which is Madcap there. And it's a really great tool, and our users love it. But you reach a point where you realize that users actually, at the end, always go back to Google. I guess the Google algorithm is so strong and people are used to using Google. So I guess it really comes back to how much resource and time do you have to really improve your your searchability of documentation, I guess. So in terms of SEO and search optimization, I think having a right content, having a right title helps. But overall, in terms of engine or the type of search engine that you use, I think it's really a sort of we have to figure out how much resources that you have in your team to invest time to improve your overall searchability of your documentation, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Super. So are all your documentation out to public that can be accessed freely, or is it all protected with the username and password?
So it's freely available. So that's where the search engine, I guess, is a sort of a, what sort of search engine do you want to use? Because it's openly accessible. Just go to Google and search for a specific term, and at our company there are docs of Solace, right? Because you have all the stuff that it's easy for them to find. Well, if in the other hand, if your documentation was within sort of a firewall or restricted user, I guess you could figure out, or you could invest more time and resources in improving your internal search engine, I guess.
Yeah. So in that sense, do you generate any organic search traffic from your documentation, Ash?
We do. We also work very closely with marketing in terms of improving our organic documentation. But from our end, we make sure that we're using the right keywords. We are titling we have right titles for each and every sort of topic that we have. So that kind of helps in terms of organic search. And then we also do a lot of cross references and links with other different sites and external sites. So that kind of helps as well.
Super. One question I would like to ask after hearing how big your team is and how many people get involved in this process. So how big is your documentation team, Ash?
We are four people in the team. And we are divided in terms of some people work in the SaaS space, some people work in the cloud, some people in the hardware. We also work together for tackling all the bugs as well. So it really depends, yeah.
Oh, super. That's great. So I think we are very close to getting to our rapid fire round questions. So anything else you would like to add to this section of the podcast?
No, I'm good for now. Yeah.
All right. Super. So who have you learned
I guess I would like to add one thing. Sorry.
Go on.
One thing though. I think, I think the kind of documentation, I think, plays a very critical role in terms of product adaptation, like how users adopt a product. I used to think that before, that users come to your documentation only when they get stuck or when they have a problem, which I guess to some extent is still true. But with the number of technologies that's been coming out and the competition that's out there in the market, many users come to your documentation or basically to see how the product works, right? To learn something and see if they can, if it's easy to use, if it fits really well with their company or the product they have. So if you have a really bad documentation or a guide that causes frustration, it kind of builds a distrust. So having a good documentation where the installation is easy, the conceptual guides are perfect, and it's easy to use and easy to navigate, really helps people adopt your product more quickly, and also I think helps to improve your brand and trust as well, I think. So,
absolutely. Very well said, Arshia. That's absolutely right. Yeah. Nowadays, documentation is just not only to FAQs, it's used for many purposes. Yeah. Super. So who have you learned the most about documentation from in your career?
Over the careers, I think I would say my colleagues. I think I've had the opportunity to work with some really smart people, so I've learned a lot from people who I've worked with. So thanks to everyone that who's helped me all this until now. And then during my early, one book that really helped me a lot to improve my writing was Elements of Style. I think that was really good. And these days, I like Tom Johnson's blog. I think I'd rather be writing is a good resource for most for technical writers. He does a really good job. Yeah.
Super. Did you listen to his podcast?
I do. Yeah.
So
once in a while, and I've been listening to yours as well. So since I came to know about it, yeah.
Yes.
Some really good speakers.
He was one of the guests as well, so that's great. Yes. Yeah. Super. So I think you kind of answered my second question, but any other documentation related resource you have recently consumed?
I guess the Tom Johnson's. I read his blogs regularly. STC, I think I read their newsletter as well. I was a member of STC Toronto, so I was actively involved before then. So I received the newsletters. The resources are really good as well. Yeah.
Super. So thank you to Tom and STC members. So what is that one piece of documentation related advice you would give to your 20-year-old self?
If I were to give one advice to myself, I would say that I would master a language or a specific skill that really complements technical writing. I think, yes, most focused on technical writers are considered master of all, jack of all trades, and that is correct. And most of us focus on writing, but I think if you have that one specific skill that you're really strong in, I think that is really a clear bonus in your career.
Super. So I think that's very well said again, given the current generation. So,
Yeah.
um,
And it's
super.
a changing environment, right? The whole thing is you're always learning for sure, and you have to keep up with that. But at the same time, I think if you're skilled at a specific area and you can portray that really well, I find that I would say that that's very useful.
Super. So once again, Arsh, I think we are very close to the end of this podcast. So it's been a very short but a crisp one. So anything else before we say bye to our audience?
Nothing much. I think, given the circumstances, how things are right now, I think I would say that we all need to be resilient, and and we shouldn't hesitate to reach out to people and ask for help and advice if you need to, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. So keep safe, stay indoors as much as possible.
Yes.
So thank you, Ash, for sharing your experience. And I think it's been an absolutely incredible journey you had, and sharing this with us it makes us even more special. And I know it's just the start of the day for you. Enjoy your day and the sunshine.
Yeah. You too, Gauri. Thanks very much for having me again.
Super. Thank you, Ash.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.